The Blixen is becoming easily one of the best SMGs in Warzone, and even as a DLC weapon, its usage is growing pretty quickly. This is probably the fastest we've ever seen a DLC weapon climb the ranks, and you can see the KD is way up there. It's just usually leading to, obviously, good players unlock it first, or whatever the case is. They level it, they adopt it as the meta, but that is a clear indication that this thing is very, very good. And we kind of even see how this has changed over. We can see this purple line, as it was added, it kind of skips up and it continues to go up as more and more people are trying it out. But it seems like there's a lot of confusion on what is the best build, because this weapon works a little bit differently than some of the other DLC weapons that we've had in Vanguard, or Vanguard weapons in general. This is the first time we've had damage changing attachments without the rate of fire changing. If you look through all of these, you only see a damage and damage range change, which doesn't impact the rate of fire. When we go over to magazine, all of these have the same rate of fire, even though the damage placements are different. And what does that all mean? It means I gotta plug in various combinations with hollow point, different barrels, different mags to figure out what the most common TTKs are after looking at the shot placement that is required to get those TTKs. Look at the overall muzzle velocity and things like that. Then that gives us a bunch of similar TTKs, but we got to look a little bit further to find out where certain ones are going to shine. And when we put that to a graph, it ends up looking like this with a bunch of various colors that are overlapping. We got to go ahead and subtract the ones that aren't really all that making sense. Like this first one here, the TTK is just too high. You can see that pretty much all of them are aligned right here on this bottom line. And that's where we want to go ahead and pick the most competitive TTK. Then once we remove that, we are left with only 4. And what you can see right here is we have the 9mm with no barrel. And when I say no barrel, that's no damage changing barrel. You can actually still use the strafing barrel that helps with the horizontal recoil, or the last barrel that actually will help with a recoil control as well. So you got the option there. This just means that it doesn't have a damage modifying barrel like the RMK barrel. And then we also have the Gorenko 36 rounds without a barrel, the Gorenko 36 with the RMK. Then we can see that this is the Gorenko 54 with the RMK barrel and the hollow point rounds. And you can see overall, if you're just looking for the absolute best TTK, you're going to use this yellow line, Gorenko 36 with the RMK barrel without hollow point, because you're not getting that advantage when you compare them side to side. So that'll allow you to run subsonic. Same thing with the Gorenko 36 with an alternative barrel. And that's why I think those two are kind of been the most popular options. And then obviously if you need ammo, you kind of want to go with the 54, or you can even go with the 9mm no barrel or one of those other barrels. So these come down to be a little bit more of preference, how often you're pushing a building. This first one's going to allow you to have 72 bullets versus 36 versus 54. So it really depends on that. On top of that, the RMK will increase your recoil, and I kind of experimented with it. No matter what, this gun will have a little bit more recoil, but that's why you're barrel stuffing. But 17 meters is nothing to laugh at. Like, that is a pretty solid number that you're going to get decent TTK at, even though it might be a little bit harder to hit the shots. So now let's look at the build. So this is kind of how we start our first build. We got the recoil booster for obvious reasons, and then we got the slate reflector. The first build we'll have is what I would call the no barrel build, and that is going to be with the 9mm rounds, which is either the base ones, or you could take advantage of the extra ammo. So we got the 72 round mag, and then we're going to go ahead and combine that with hollow point, and that's going to allow it to fit into that particular TTK. Ideally, you're going to go with this Carlson custom, and that's going to be the main one you can go, because you do not need a barrel. You can actually go with a different barrel. You don't need this damage barrel to get a decent TTK. Then you can go ahead and go with the stock, whether you want to go remove stock, maybe the recoil is a little bit much for you, maybe you go with this skeletal stock, and that'll help with a little bit of the recoil. And then you could either go with the hatched, which is going to be the horizontal recoil, which this kind of mainly has a little bit of horizontal recoil for about 20 shots, and then it just stops and kind of bounces around, which is kind of a little bit awkward for controller players if you go ahead and fire the entire mag out. So that could be a little interesting. You can get polymer. And then if you're looking for the strafe speed, you go with grooved. It kind of just depends on where you're at skill level and how you're going to push these fights. I think overall, I would go with the hatch grip because it doesn't really have any downsides. Then you can go with the hand stop or the compact. And those are the two, whether you need recoil control or aim down sight strafe speed. Those are kind of the different ways you'd go. With this build, you are getting a little bit of everything because you're getting a little bit of recoil control. You get a little recoil control. You get strafe speed, hip fire. So this is an all-around decent build, especially if you want a lot of ammo and you're dealing with quads. And it's the same thing. We go to the 36, but we do not need hollow point rounds. So we can either go with lengthen, so we just get a little bit better bullet velocity, or we can go with subsonic, which will allow us to stay off the minimap. And that is kind of still a similar build, the same things that I talked about. You'll be able to just swap those in and out. Other option is to switch to the RMK barrel. Again, this one will give you the best all-around build in terms of range and TTK, with the only exception of probably the Type 100, which can also get kind of nutty at those ranges because of the fire rate, and also only has a 36 round mag. And then last but not least, when we go ahead and go to the 54, because maybe you want ammo, I would go with the hollow point rounds, and then that is kind of how you would set that up with the RMK barrel. So you got 4 options to try out, all pretty competitive. You can kind of see on the graph, if you want to go ahead and look back at that, where they all fell in line and kind of where their strengths and weaknesses are based off their recoil. And you got like 3 attachments that you can kind of mess with and play with to figure out what is going to be the most consistent for you in terms of accuracy, because that's definitely important. Appreciate the support. Thank you for watching. As always, have a great day.